All right, I said this once before this year, and I didn't think it would happen again, but Motorola got one up on Samsung too. The Moto G Stylus 2025 is Motorola's newest device that they're bringing to the table for us here in the States. It's Motorola's most feature-packed phone for us here in the US, along with being the only other phone available in the United States with a built-in stylus. But is all of that put together worth $400 for you? Well, let's take a look at it and find out. What's going on, guys? TyTech here, back again, and here's my review of the Moto G Stylus 2025. As always, guys, I'm your host, TyTech. Thank you guys for being here. And if you're new to the channel, come on in, don't be shy. And while you're here, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Let's get this channel to 25K before the end of the year. And let me know down in the comments what you guys think of the Moto G Stylus 2025. On with the video. Now, off rip, I gotta give it to Motorola for the new clean white packaging. Gives me Seth Rollins SummerSlam 2015 vibes. I fuck with it a lot. And the design of the phone that comes inside the packaging is just as clean, with improvements on last year's Moto G Stylus. Now, I've said this before in my other Motorola videos, and I'll continue to say it here, but Motorola's use of vegan leather for the back of their phones is one of the best examples of function over form. Not only does it flow beautifully around the dual camera setup that you get on this phone, but it's more dirt and scratch resistant than phones with glass backs. That means there's just one less thing for you to break and then have to pay to replace. But the best thing about it is the amount of grip this texture gives your fingers. It never felt like this phone was ever going to fall out of my hands at all. That's not to say that there isn't any form here. I just wish that Motorola would have picked different colors for this phone this time around. Like last year, we got these beautiful bright red and sexy caramel colors. The Moto G Stylus 2025 comes in two colors this year, both of which being blue and blue, with one version of blue being perfect for anyone who just so happens to be a fan of the Colorado Avalanche, while the other blue looks like something you would get if you were just strapped it to SmackDown. Triple H! On the front, you get a 6.7-inch, 120 Hz display, same as last year, but it's an AMOLED Super HD display this time around, which is more power efficient to save you battery life, which gives you richer, brighter colors, and gets to a higher peak brightness than last year's Moto G Stylus. 3000 nits up from 1200 nits last year. That's the same outdoor peak brightness as a Pro model iPhone today. Vastly different display technologies, yes, I know, but the fact you're only paying $400 for this much display clarity and brightness is kind of crazy, not gonna lie. Holding this whole phone together is a plastic frame housing your volume and power buttons on the right-hand side, SIM tray on the left-hand side, I'll get back to that in a second, along with your charging port, speaker, and headphone jack on the bottom with your stylus housed at the side. And it's that plastic frame and vegan leather back that lends this phone to being a very lightweight and comfortable in-hand experience long term. It's only about 191 grams, so you'll be able to use this phone for long periods of time without tiring out your hands. And there's a two-tone strip going down the side of the Moto G Stylus 2025, where the matte section is the best place for your fingers to grip onto, and the glossy edges are comfortable for your palms. However, two things about the design of this phone. Number one, the speakers are very tinny and they seem to lack a lot of bass, as you guys can hear here. 15 or iPhone 15 Pro, which will give them a much better experience. Which means I just ended up using headphones with this phone the majority of the time. And number two is that Motorola is using display glass that really isn't all that recent, but you know, it's okay, I guess. I mean, it only came out in 2013. Just for perspective, this is what I looked like in 2013. The Walking Dead was still a watchable show in 2013. Motorola, your market share was still 7% in 2013. Don't make me fight you. But from there, I can tell you that the software and the performance of this phone is much more than fine, because the Moto G Stylus is a performance beast. Inside the Moto G Stylus 2025, you get a Snapdragon 6 Gen 3 chip compared to the Gen 1 chip that was used in last year's Moto G Stylus. You get 8 gigabytes of RAM this time around, 256 gigabytes of storage with expandable storage available, along with Android 15 out of the box with Motorola's very light Moto skin on top of it. That's refreshingly devoid of bloatware, which is a good thing for everyone who gets this phone. Now, if you're subscribed to the channel, which if you're not, you should do that right now. It's free and it helps out your boy a lot. And you watched my previous video on the Galaxy A36, you should recognize the name of that processor because that's the same processor that was used in the Galaxy A36 as well. But if you compare the Moto G Stylus 2025 and the Galaxy A36, both of their base $400 versions where you only get 6 gigabytes of RAM on the A36, where you get 8 gigabytes of RAM on the Moto G Stylus 2025, the Moto G Stylus 2025 ever so slightly outperforms the A36 in terms of Geekbench performance. However, in terms of actual performance, the fingerprint sensor and face unlock biometric options were much faster, more responsive, and didn't lag when you first got to the home screen. Scrolling and moving between screens and menus was very snappy, fluid, and responsive with little to no lag or skipping. This phone was impressively fluid for a Motorola phone, I would say. Like the animations when changing songs in the music player or returning to the main menu from the multitasking menu. You can tell that Motorola took the little bit of extra time to iron things like that out. And while the occasional app might take a couple of seconds to open with this phone because of that 8 gigabytes of RAM that you're given, this phone is much better at keeping those apps open and running without having to refresh them once you go back. Of course, you get the classic Moto features, chop chop to open up your flashlight, and flick of the wrist to open up your cameras. As far as new features on the Moto G Stylus 2025, this phone was kind of dry, I have to admit. There were a couple of hit and miss features like swipe to split, a quicker and more convenient way of activating split screen, and then there's a new media control option, a way of being able to skip back and forth between songs using only your volume buttons when your phone screen is off. But I can't really think of an instance where having that feature on would be a net positive for anyone. At least you get your AI fix with the Moto G Stylus 2025, with things like the Gemini AI assistant built right in, sketch to image, a way of creating AI generated photos just from your drawings. It actually works fairly well and would probably work better if you have better artistic skill than me. And circle to search, which is even better with the built-in stylus. But that is when we have to talk about the piece de resistance of the Moto G Stylus. The stylus.
Weird, buddy. You're weird.
Because Motorola has made a lot of improvements to the stylus this year. It's now a matte plastic instead of a glossy plastic. It's easier to hold in my hands this time around, which makes writing much more comfortable. And while the tip of this stylus is still this rounded wire mesh that makes you feel like you're writing with a dull pencil all the time, Motorola has greatly improved the responsiveness and the tightness of your writing with the stylus this time around. Like last year, I talked about how it felt like I couldn't really tell where my letters were starting and ending when writing with the Moto G Stylus last year. Thankfully, this year, that is not the case. This was much more of a comfortable writing experience for me. It felt like a better hold in the hands, and it felt like I actually knew where my words and letters were starting and ending when I finished writing with this stylus. However, I wouldn't say that this stylus is really meant for drawing or writing. This rounded wire mesh tip really doesn't lend itself well to a precise writing or drawing experience, especially if you're trying to be as crisp as you can with your line work. I said this before in my Moto G Stylus 2024 video, but the stylus that Motorola uses really lends itself more to making this phone feel like a PDA from back in the day. This stylus lent itself better to things like system navigation, scrolling, and precise typing if you have unsteady hands. While the S Pen that's used in the Galaxy Ultra series at this point is better for art and creation because of its finer tip, better responsiveness, and Samsung software features. At least before the S25 nerfed the S Pen's camera features. And since we're talking about cameras, let's go ahead and talk about those, because that's usually where Motorola budget phones tend to fall off a cliff. With the Moto G Stylus 2025, you get a 50 megapixel wide angle lens capable of shooting 4K video at 30 frames per second and 1080p video at 30 or 60 frames per second, along with a 13 megapixel ultra wide lens on the back, along with a 32 megapixel wide angle selfie camera on the front with the same video capabilities as your main camera on the back. 4K video at 30 FPS and 1080p video at 30 and 60 FPS. Now, these aren't bad photos by any means, and they actually impress me in some cases. Colors were quite poppy and saturated for photos that had subjects that were naturally colorful to begin with. Photos look sharp and crisp upon first glance when there's enough light in the photo. And portrait and selfie photos were my favorite photos to take with this device. The bokeh in the background is damn near perfect, and the camera is doing a good job at keeping me separated from the background and keeping me in focus to make sure my details are as polished as they can possibly be. However, that's kind of where the good stuff ends with the cameras on the Moto G Stylus 2025, because once you start zooming into your photos, you begin to lose all the sharpness you thought was there before, and everything starts to blend together into patches of color that resemble more of a toddler finger painting than the phone that costs $400. And since there's no telephoto lens on this device, you're stuck with digital zoom, and it's as good as you would think for a phone at this price point, which is not very. The color balance seems to be all right on the subject of the photo that you're taking, but everything else in the background is washed out, making things brighter than they were when you first took the photo. This house was not that yellow, I assure you, along with overexposure problems like light spilling over the bill of my cap here. Selfie videos have the same problem with the left side of the sky here being so bright it looks like Big G is about to pop out like Canon Friends last year. Or like the lights at this bar I went to whilst I was on vacation, because low light photos on this phone aren't good either. There's so much grain and noise in low light photos that I genuinely feel like you'd be better off asking someone else to use their phone if you want to get an actually good photo. Ordinary photos and selfies in low light suffer from the same afflictions, with all detail being lost as soon as you zoom in. Video performance on this phone really wasn't much better. Videos are smooth and fluid thanks to the optical image stabilization on your main camera. And again, colors are beautiful and poppy, but the dynamic range, the balance between the light and dark areas of a photo or video, isn't very good on this phone. And with low light videos, this phone's problem with overexposure and lack of dynamic range is made even more apparent. We'll throw in the slowness of your camera shutter and the lag in the movement of your focal lengths as other reasons why the camera performance in this phone isn't very good, but admittedly, that's a pretty common thing for budget phones at this price point, no matter what the manufacturer. You'll have to worry about the camera performance. You will not, however, have to worry a day about battery life, because the Moto G Stylus 2025 is an absolute battery champion. Inside this phone, you get a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with options for 68 watt wired charging, and hey, look at that, you get 15 watt wireless charging. I'm totally not throwing shade at Samsung for always taking wireless charging out of their mid-range and budget phones. But no matter what I was doing on this device, whether it was watching videos, browsing and scrolling through web pages, using navigation, I was able to get through every day and then some with more than enough juice left over in this phone. Even on days where I forgot to charge it overnight, or on days where I had admittedly light use, I never had to worry about getting through an entire day of battery life with the Moto G Stylus 2025, which meant I had plenty of battery life left over to talk to my family with crisp and clear calls, and use T-Mobile's ultra capacity 5G network 4 hours without any issue. Of course, both of those things are going to differ and vary depending on a number of different factors like location, your carrier plan, you get it. Overall, Samsung, y'all got washed this year. I'm not even going whole, bro. I'm not sure if this was just an off year, because in my opinion, they just got postered by Motorola in the mid-range and budget departments. I know I still need to review the Galaxy A16 and the Moto G 2025, but if my reviews on the A36, Moto G Power, and now the Moto G Stylus 2025 are anything to go off of, I'm probably gonna put my money on Motorola to win that battle too. But with regards to the Moto G Stylus 2025, this phone was one of the most complete smartphone experiences I have had in years. I know in terms of features, capability, designs, etc., it can go much higher than this, but for $400, I never felt like anything was missing with this phone, and anything I needed, this phone gave me access to. Enough battery life to get me through the day, a big, bright, and fluid display for all of my daily use, multiple charging options. If I didn't have my wireless headphones for any reason, I didn't have to go buy some dongle. I just went and found a pair of wireless headphones that have been sitting in my drawer for years. If I needed more storage, I didn't need to start anxiously combing through my phone for things to delete because I had an SD card slot. If the back of this phone ever got destroyed somehow, a replacement back is $20 off eBay. Once I get them, because this phone is too new, but you get my point. All that rolled into one for just $400, bro. The only real grievance I can give to this phone, a grievance that I can't mitigate myself through my own actions, is the fact that this phone will only get 2 to 3 years of software updates at most. But again, that's par for the course for phones at this price range. But for Motorola to be selling a good, high refresh rate, bright quality display, amazing performance to go along with amazing battery life, unique and niche features, along with all the classic essentials you used to get with your smartphone for just $400, final grade for this phone, it's an A. It's an A+. Like I don't, there's nothing else for me to say. If you have $400 and you need a new phone, this might be the one. Anyway, guys, that has been my review of the Moto G Stylus 2025. If you or anyone you know are looking for a tremendously designed smartphone, the beautiful display, amazing battery life, all the essential features that you would need in a smartphone, all for just $400. I'll leave some shopping links in the description below, but you know what I always say, guys, the choice is yours. Make your move. But that's gonna do it for my review of the Moto G Stylus 2025. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's get this channel to 25K before the end of the year. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Later. What's going on, guys? Ty Tech here. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and check out some of my other content that should be floating around the screen right now. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.